What drives a king and his people to expand their lands to the very edge of the unknown? Why are the people willing to sacrifice their lives and that of their families for a ruler they have never met? The legends of our ancestors is what drive us. The way people speak of our predecessors and what they managed to achieve. Everybody here has heard of the great Srivijaya Empire, a great power of the past that exerted its rule upon all of the islands and even dared to dictate high tolls to the Indian and Chinese trading ships that passed between them. Sadly, that same greed also led to their downfall. The animal that we hold in highest esteem in our culture is the kanchil, and foreigners laugh at us when they hear about it. Why would you ever think so highly of such a small and benign creature, they ask. But that is because they know nothing of its heart. Despite its unimpressive appearance, the kanchil has the ability to overcome any obstacle, defeat much larger adversaries through sheer cunning, and possesses a bravery like that of no other animal. Just like the kanchil, small and benign as we are now, we will raise a new empire from the ground up, the Majapahit Empire, larger and stronger than any before it. Our legends will ripple through the ages, and we will be remembered. And this is how our founder, Arya Viraraja, created the Majapahit Empire from the small village he was given, defeating his Javanese overlord and the mighty Mongol invaders by being cunning, just like the Kanchil. I'm certain the gods have favored him and his family. This is why I, Gajah Mada, commander of the elite guard of the Majapahit kings, have sworn to serve them for the rest of my life. I've been suspecting it for a while now, but today it became reality. Powers within the Majapahit Empire threatened to bring down our beloved king. While I was on an errands run, a nobleman called Rakrian Kuti has taken up arms and is besieging the royal palace with the king still inside it. Things are looking grim, but luckily the king still has many supporters, including the Prime Minister, Arya Tada. Together, we've decided to free the king before dealing with the rebellion. Hopefully, we'll be in time to save him. We managed to crush the unlawful rebellion of that treacherous usurper, and during the great festivities that followed, I've been promoted to a higher position. However, a part of me is starting to regret saving our king. Jayanagara believes he's untouchable now, and his behavior is becoming increasingly immoral. He desires the wives and daughters of his subordinates, making him very hated among the nobility. Some even call him a weak villain. Tribhuwana, his stepsister who I've known since she was young, has told me in confidence that the king is now also showing inappropriate behavior towards her. One way or another, the king's actions have to stop. This afternoon, the king died. His doctor murdered him during a minor operation. Once I heard of this news, I had the doctor immediately arrested and killed. The king's stepsister, Tribhuwana, is now the queen regent. One of her first actions as queen was to retire the former prime minister, Aryatada, after it became clear that he had failed to do his job and I was made prime minister in his stead. Immediately I swore an oath in front of everyone in the throne room. I would prove that I would be the greatest prime minister of all of Majapahit's history, and I would not eat any spices or fruits until I had conquered the entire non-Indonesian archipelago. Even my closest friends were at first doubtful of my promises, but I showed them. One by one, our mighty army and majestic fleets conquered the surrounding territories. From the paradise island of Bali to the old ruins of the Srivijaya Empire, all are now under control of the Majapahit Empire, just like I said it would. Time is relentless as I am growing older and older. The queen abdicated now that her son Hayam Wuruk has come of age. Nevertheless, this does not affect my objectives. Retaining my position as Prime Minister, I'll continue my military campaigns. My work still isn't done, as my oath is yet to be fully fulfilled. Majapahit's navy will go east, towards the rich tropical islands. There are as many as the stars in the sky, but they too will recognize my authority, and that of the king, of course. Never before has an empire controlled so much of the Indonesian archipelago. The Majapahit Empire is truly blessed. Even the Chinese and Indians have recognized its power. All that remains for me to fulfill my oath is to take the one remaining kingdom on the island of Java, the kingdom of Sunda. They can no longer be allowed to exist on the very same island as us. Even though my king maintains good relationships with them, I'll find a way for them to submit to my will. I came up with a plan for the Sunda issue. I've arranged a marriage between my king and one of their princesses. They think the wedding documents secured an alliance with us, but in fact, it states they will submit to Majapahit rule. My king has ordered me to go to Bubat Square in our capital to welcome the princess as she arrives with her family and escort them to our palace in safety. Even he doesn't know of the plot. I don't know how they'll react when they find out the truth, but I won't give them the chance to do anything about it. As we speak, my army encroaches on Bubat Square. Faced with the harsh reality of the situation, the Sunda will have no choice but to continue the ceremony. Things turned bad really quickly. My army surrounded the Sunda royal family at Bubat Square, and I ordered them to put down their weapons. I was sure they would comply. I certainly didn't expect them to draw their weapons and attack my army when they were so vastly outnumbered. But feeling humiliated by the treaty, that's what they did. Outnumbered and surrounded from all sides, they bravely fought till the very end. My own king and his family, the family I had spent my entire life serving, were disgusted by my actions. When the king summoned me, I could see the disappointment and loathing in his eyes. In tears, he told me that his bride-to-be had committed suicide after the events that took place, and that I had ruined the reputation of our empire. Many in the Majapahit Empire wanted me dead, but because of my long years of service, the king did not desire my demise. Instead, he told me to withdraw from the royal court and to retreat to a small mansion in the countryside. Death would have been a less harsh punishment than having to live with this shame. And so, here I am, a lonely old man, once ambitious and young, now trapped in this secluded place. I realize I was not smart like the Kanchil, but rather was greedy and blind like the animals it misleads. The assassination of the first king, removing the former prime minister, all the schemes I had in place. I let nothing come in the way of my ambitions. And now, I have to pay the price.
Forward march! We do not stop until the sun falls beneath the tree line. I am Sangrama, honored general of the Khmer Empire, tasked with quelling a rebellion. Just a year after the passing of the revered Suryavarman I, his successor faces staunch opposition. It threatens to dismantle the empire that Suryavarman took nearly 5 decades to build. Inspiring an army of largely levy soldiery is difficult. Most are simple farmers and craftsmen, strangers to the ways of war and the grim chaos of battle. They should understand the cause for which they fight. As we trudged through the mud, I summoned the captains to the front of the line. Knowing them personally, these men speak to the troops directly under their command in a different way than I ever could. I would tell them of the events that occurred before many of them were born. Suryavarman was once little more than a magnate with a minor claim to the throne held by another. Udayadityavarman I had established his seat at Angkor, claiming the entire empire as his dominion. Gathering his army, Suryavarman marched on Angkor from the west, establishing a camp not far from the city. The captains listened eagerly as I gave my account of the usurpation. Despite a numerical disadvantage, Suryavarman's tactical acumen proved critical to the success of such a risky offensive. Droves of Udayadityavarman's troops fell to Suryavarman's disciplined infantry and elephant corps. Entering Angkor, Suryavarman gave the order to his disciplined army that the city was to be left intact, the civilians unharmed. He would not begin his rule by committing acts of savage tyranny upon his own people. Ascent to power does not come easily. Once the hat of one beast is removed, three spring to take its place. Such was the case with Suryavarman's enemies. Rebel factions sprung up to the north, east, and south of Angkor. Legions of disgruntled soldiers marched on the city, threatening to topple Suryavarman just as quickly as he had ascended to power. The most dangerous rebel faction was led by Jayavirvarman, a warlord from Malaysia with a distant claim to the throne. Advancing from the south at a rapid pace, he acquired much support from the local populace. Suryavarman had to act quickly. The rebel forces, were they to unite, would present quite a challenge to an army that had only recently emerged victorious from a grueling campaign. There was precious little time to spare. Humans are interesting creatures. At times they display incredible brilliance, and yet at others they behave like obstinate fools. One can only wonder at the folly that caused the rebel factions to not coordinate their forces. A bundle of sticks is difficult to break, but individual twigs snap as if they were bits of straw. Suryavarman's victory assured that this lesson would not be forgotten. As the empire boomed, its neighbors became wary. A growing tiger gorged itself on the prey that it deems most vulnerable. Some dreaded the looming war and prayed that their fears were unjustified. Others prepared for it. The kingdom of Tambralinga, a vassal of the great Srivijayan Thessalocracy, felt particularly threatened. The empire was surrounded by hostile neighbors, and conflict was imminent. It seemed that the only thing left to question would be who would strike first. Suryavarman was wise enough to know that passivity would only lead to disaster. The various Burmese kingdoms to the west of the empire behaved with hostility, but a potential ally lay beyond. The Cholas, a powerful dynasty based in the south of the Indian subcontinent, had interests that aligned with those of the Khmer. Dispatching a diplomatically skilled envoy laden with gifts could be enough to convince Rajendra Chola that an alliance with Suryavarman would be to his liking. Despite the hardships of the journey through hostile territory, the diplomatic convoy arrived in Chola lands largely intact. Rajendra Chola was pleased with the gifts that the envoy lavished upon him. Especially impressive was a grand chariot, a work fashioned by the finest craftsmen in Angkor. Generous offerings and well-chosen birds go a long way with a magnanimous ruler. A bargain was struck, and the envoy returned to Angkor, harbinger of pleasant news. With the alliance made and the pieces on the board, conflict was inevitable. The Tambralingas themselves posed only a token threat, but they had the support of the immense naval empire of Srivijaya. The prowess of the Srivijayan navy was unmatched, but their coalition was at its tactical disadvantage. The Khmer forces threatened the enemy by land from the north and by sea from the east, while the Cholas struck out from the west. The enemy found themselves surrounded on all sides. Suryavarman sent word to the Chola force to establish a foothold on the Malay Peninsula. Taking the initiative, he ordered the outfitting of a massive navy to challenge the Srivijayans and Tambralingas for maritime supremacy. Everything hinged on the success of the Chola force that had landed on the mainland. If they could present a formidable enough threat and occupy the enemy land forces, Suryavarman would be able to wrest control of the water and launch a devastating amphibious invasion. If the Cholas were driven from their foothold, the Khmer would be forced to face down their opponents alone, a prospect with which Suryavarman would not be particularly excited. Storms raged as wooden vessels rammed into each other, a deafening sound prefaced by the whistling of projectiles through the air. Thousands of men sank below the angry waves, never to rise again. The Chola land force fought bravely, holding to the last. just as it seemed that they were consigned to defeat the hands of the Tambralinga Srivijaya force, salvation arrived in the form of swarms of Khmer. Victory has a glorious taste. Over the course of a single conflict, the influence and power of the empire were raised to unprecedented levels. With the maritime rivals of the empire crushed, Suryavarman set his sights on the mainland. As the war with the Tambralinga Srivijaya alliance had progressed, it had not escaped his attention that rivals closer to home had been plotting and wishing for his ruin. The rulers of the various Burmese and Cham kingdoms slunk around in the shadows like disgraced cravens. Instead of recognizing the superiority of their larger neighbor, they deviously plotted its downfall and encouraged rebellion within it. This behavior was unacceptable. Suryavarman's enemies may have been too intimidated to face the Khmer juggernaut head-on, but Suryavarman had no such reservations. These provocations had provided an optimal casus belli. It was high time that the empire saw further expansion. The Mekong and Chao Phraya rivers snaked through rich, fertile lands held by decadent, unstable kingdoms ripe for conquest. Triumph would add yet another achievement to Suryavarman's legendary military record. Hegemony is a wonderful thing. The power and prestige of the Khmer Empire reached new levels under Suryavarman I, and all prospered. Despite being known as a great conqueror, Suryavarman was not simply a militaristic aggressor. His reign was marked by vast improvements in the general infrastructure of the empire and an emphasis on religious toleration. He erected numerous palaces and temple complexes and ruled benevolently. His legacy lives through these structures, the pride of our citizens and the strength of the Khmer Empire. This legacy is a cause worth defending, for Suryavarman's image lives on within it. It is this notion of greatness that you must invoke to electrify the minds of the common soldiery.
(1538 AD), year 8 of the reign of King Tabin Shweti. Over 2 decades ago, before I was even born, an old village shaman came to our little mountain kingdom of Tungwo. He claimed to speak with the Nats, the ancestral spirits worshipped by our people before the coming of Buddhism. The Nats had told the shaman that an ancient warrior prince would be reincarnated in our kingdom. This prince would rule as the Chakravarti, the universal ruler embodying Buddhist virtue. Soon after, a son named Tabin Shweti was reborn to one of the king's wives. At the same time, a servant girl had herself just birthed a son, and she was made the newborn prince's wet nurse. After all these years, I know the story of King Tabin Shweti's birth well. I am the son of his wet nurse. Though we came from very different origins, the Nats had joined the king and I. Though the Nats prophesied King Tabin Shweti's greatness, they blessed me as well. But not in the way my mother sees it. She does not believe that the king is the one the shaman spoke of. She says the Nats are not that simple. They are tricky spirits who mislead with their blessings. But I tell my mother that I am no warrior prince. The Nats have blessed me, though not as she believes. Because the king and I both suckled from my mother. He has treated me like kin and made me his loyal general. But with every blessing comes a curse. Our kingdom is under attack by the Shan, a warrior people of the far north. Our city's walls cannot stop them, so I have proposed to my king that we attack south, away from the northern threat. The kingdom of Hantawadi is a wealthy land and home of the Mon people, but it is ruled by a paranoid and cowardly king. As we march south, the Nats bring fear into the Mon king's heart. He flees his lands for the safety of his allies, just as a frightened water buffalo runs to his herd after smelling a tiger. The king and I are the Burmese tigers, chasing after that buffalo. To reward my service in battle, my king bestowed a name of great honor upon me, Bayinnaung, which means king's elder brother. Though he is a king and I am but the son of a servant girl, he embraced me and declared a shared blood. I am no longer a simple servant. I am Bayinnaung. I am a prince. (1543 AD), year 13 of the reign of King Tabinshweti. Our conquest of Lower Burma has brought fear to the Shan warlords. They call upon their allies, the Kingdom of Ava and the mighty Rakhine people, to raise armies against us. My king and I marched north to Upper Burma, following the pilgrimage trail to Pagan, city of 10,000 temples. From this city, the ancient kings of Pagan once ruled over a united Burmese people. If my king is to rule all of Burma, he must be crowned in Pagan. I will march ahead of my king to secure the city while he leads the army against our enemies. I will make all preparations for his coronation in that ancient capital. I will make sure that my brother fulfills his prophesied destiny. Our kingdom is mighty under King Tabinshweti. The greatest monks, warriors, and administrators in all of Burma come to our court. The king has made me his chief minister, but I worry for my brother. A man from Portugal has stumbled into the court and intrigued the king with his foreign ways and a bottle of strong wine. I fear that the blessed path that we have walked together has now come to a cursed end. (1550 AD), year 20 of the reign of King Tabinshweti. I am the chief minister of a kingdom without a king. The man from Portugal has corrupted King Tabinshweti. My lord has taken to drinking and forgotten both the ways of Buddhism and the blessings of the Nats. He lives with the foreigner for weeks at a time on long, wine-filled hunting trips. Even when he is in court, the king orders executions in drunken fits. Many of the kingdom's officials have pleaded with me to depose the king and rule Burma justly. But though I love my country, I cannot betray my brother. I should have known rebellion would come. A monk named Thor, brother of the dead Hantawadi king, incites a revolt in the south. The king is leaving on yet another hunting trip, but he has ordered me to take the army to defeat this rebel. I will follow my king's instructions, but I am concerned. A minister named Southot is eager to see me leave. I do not know what trouble he has brewing. Southot paid 2 swordsmen of the king's bodyguard to enter my brother's tent as he slept. Their pockets heavy with the traitor's gold, they drew their swords and beheaded my brother. His body was found by a monk and quietly cremated. I would throw away this crown if it brought my brother back. But he is among the nuts now. The nuts were tricky, just as my mother told me. They took my brother from me. I should not be king. I should not be the Chakravarti. But the nuts made it so. I reject them. 1563 AD, year 13 of the reign of Bayinnaung, king of all Burma. The tiger rules the forest, but he is always hungry. It is the same with me as I look to the Thai kingdoms of the east. I have ruled for 13 years, but how am I the Chakravarti if I am only king of Burma? Ayutthaya is the strongest of the Thai kingdoms. Her king, Chakrapath, has defied me for too long. He encourages the rebellion of one of my vassals, the king of Lanna. Even now, he sends his daughter to marry the ruler of the kingdom of Lanshang in exchange for an alliance against me. But these schemes alone do not drive me to war. I know that Chakrapath has 7 white elephants, a symbol of luck and divine favor. Already I hear the murmurs in the court. People with more spirit than sense whisper that if I truly am the Chakravarti, why would the nuts have blessed Chakrapath with the elephants? I cannot allow this Thai king nor the nuts themselves to defy me. I will send my armies east, but they will not just bring war. I will send Buddhist monks with them to carry the word of my blessed Buddhist rule. I have conquered many enemies and made them bow before me. I have purged the land of the nuts, building stupas and monasteries where once the spirits ruled. I am the conqueror of the 10 directions. I am master of all between the foothills of Tibet and the waters of Malacca, between the plains of India and the mountain jungle of Vietnam. The kings of Sri Lanka and Portugal send me gifts from across the ocean. The emperors of India and China call me their equal. My life will be written in the legends of 3 nations for centuries. I am Bayinnaung. I am the Chakravarti. 1580 AD, year 30 of the reign of the Chakravarti. Though the tiger grows old, his hunger does not leave him. It grows with age, driving him to fresh hunting grounds and giving him a taste for more dangerous prey. For 30 years I have ruled Burma and made a dozen kings bow before me. But what will they say of my life? That I ruled by the sword and killed many men? That I, a king, was a slave to my desire? The old tiger is stubborn, but he knows when his hunger has gotten the best of him. My sons lead the army to conquer the Rakhine coast, the gateway to India. They are like their father once, chasing in vain across the earth for their greatest victory. My father did not live to see the conquest of the Rakhine. The doctor claimed the lung sickness took his life. But I know my father. No man who rode a charging elephant into throngs of Shan archers, who stormed the cities of the Thai, or who ruled an empire not seen since the ancient days, would die from a mere cough. No, my father left this world because he chose to. There was only one conquest left worthy of a man like Bayinnaung. I know legends will be told of him. I know old shamans will tell prophecies, but no deed would match his final act. Greater in battle than the man who would conquer 1,000 men is he who would conquer just one, himself.
Calm down, you scoundrel! Calm down and let me tell you a story. Not too long ago, when your fathers were about your age, the Chinese returned to Dai Viet. After more than 500 years of independence, the Vietnamese kingdom came once again under the thumb of a Chinese emperor. The Ming dynasty had come to assist the Vietnamese claimant to the throne. But as the country plummeted into chaos, the Ming emperor decided to take the kingdom for himself. Ming soldiers entered and occupied the Vietnamese villages and cities. But while the aristocracy prospered under Ming occupation, the common people suffered. It was clear that the Vietnamese people needed a hero to unite and free the country once more. This hero was Lê Loi. Lê Loi was the son of a nobleman, but despite his heritage, he despised the other aristocracy who had sided with the enemy. Lê Loi's family had founded a new town in northern Vietnam before the Ming occupation, far from the control of the Hanoi government. Here up far north, he gained the support of two famous families, the Trinh and the Nguyen. Vastly outnumbered, Lê Loi turned to waging a guerrilla war against the large and well-organized Ming army in 1418. His resistance could only succeed if he managed to avoid confrontation with the Ming and waited for the seeds of rebellion to bear fruit. It began slowly and with rather few successes, but soon Lê Loi started to gain more and more support from the people. The people even dismissed the former Tran dynasty, calling Lê Loi the peacemaking king. However, the Ming became wary of his actions and decided to act. A war was imminent. Then disaster struck the Vietnamese rebels. Defeated in battle and chased by the Ming army, they retreated to a mountain fortress in Chi Linh, but realized upon their arrival that there were few supplies remaining within. The mountain fortress had become a dead trap, with the Ming armies encircling it from all sides. The situation was dire for Lê Loi and his fellow commanders on top of that barren mountain. The Ming brought a large army to assure that none of the rebels would be able to escape, and the destruction of the rebellion seemed inevitable. When all appeared to be lost, one of Lê Loi's commanders, Lê Lai, devised a plan. While Lê Loi and the main bulk of the army forced their escape to the less defended eastern flank, Lê Lai pretended to be Lê Loi and led a frontal charge right into the Ming forces. Rushing into the mass of Ming soldiers, followed by his loyal men in the early morning sun, Lê Lai's final charge can be described as nothing but glorious. It was a sad day for Lê Loi and his men to have lost such a brave commander. Lê Lai died so that Lê Loi and his men could continue the fight, and so they did. The rebels became more determined than ever before. The rebellion started to pick up later that year, and this time Lê Loi could go on the offensive. The main goal for Lê Loi was to take Hanoi and prevent Ming reinforcements to reach the garrisons in the southern Vietnamese cities. However, the Ming army was large and determined to keep the city. The Ming tried their best to prevent Hanoi from falling, but in the end failed to do so. With Hanoi captured, Lê Loi had shown that the rebellion was well underway to achieve its goals. Now the Ming had learned to fear him. They knew he was a strong pretender for the throne, and if they wanted to stop him, they'd have to bring in a more experienced general. Once Hanoi had fallen, Lê Loi looked south, towards the Ming capital of Hue An. To get there, however, his army would have to pass by a fortress, which was in the hands of Cam Bain, a Vietnamese magnate in service to the Ming. The Ming were not going to let the Vietnamese take the fortress so easily, and so they sent their most capable general, Wang Tong, to lift the siege. Wang Tong was an experienced tactician, a veteran of several Ming wars. If anyone was able to challenge Lê Loi, it would be him. The Ming made several attempts to reach the fortress, but the Vietnamese managed to repulse the large army of Wang Tong. The fortress fell, and Cam Bain was captured, signifying another important turning point in the war. Wang Tong and his army weren't completely defeated, but he had gotten himself in a bad position with low supplies. No longer able to attack the Vietnamese or prevent the Vietnamese rebels to go south, he retreated to a safe location. Now the way south laid open for Lê Loi's army, with Wang Tong following it closely. In 1425, Lê Loi wrote to Wang Tong, "In the past, we had few weapons. Now our warships line up like clouds. Armors shine against the sun. Firearms pile up, and our gunpowder storage are full. Compared to the past, our transition to a position of strength has become apparent." But despite the successes in increasing military power, Lê Loi soon found himself in another predicament. He needed to consolidate his gains in the south fast before the Ming had a chance to react. Certainly with Wang Tong so closely on his tail, waiting for him to make a mistake. To achieve his goals, Lê Loi sent his commanders out to 3 different locations. Dinh Le, commander of the cavalry, would move on the Ming citadel of Dong Do to keep Wang Tong occupied. The expert swordsman Le Trien would move north and try to intercept the reinforcements under the leadership of Liu Xing, who had broken through the northern defenses and were on their way south. And the feared Liu Nanchu and wise Bui Bi would make a move on Wei'an. Only if all 3 plans succeeded, Tran Tri and his Ming forces could be prevented from striking back. Lê Loi's plan hung by a thread, a very thin thread. The chances were stacked against the Vietnamese, but somehow they still won. Liu Sheng and his Ming reinforcements were ambushed and killed, while Wang Tong was marooned in the citadel of Dong Do. Wei'an remained in Ming hands due to the gunpowder weapons the defenders possessed. Still, the Ming were on the losing side of the war, and it was doubtful that even an able general like Wang Tong would be able to turn the tide. The Ming had lost control over most of Dai Viet. It was only a matter of time before they would be utterly defeated. Lê Loi, however, wanted to make peace and offered the Ming a peace deal where they'd divide the country. The Ming were prepared to accept it, but the Vietnamese magnates did not want to give in. Lê Loi gathered his whole army and marched for Dong Do, where Wang Tong had retreated to. The remaining Ming army was still well supplied and strong, even though no reinforcements could reach them from China. General Wang Tong would not go down without a fight. By 1427, the Ming had been defeated in battle, and Dong Do had fallen. Lê Loi and Wang Tong met in person south of the citadel, where they made a pact to cease all hostilities. It was a glorious day for the Vietnamese, as they once again gained their independence and formed a united kingdom under the leadership of the new king, the great Lê Loi. The remaining Ming soldiers and commanders were at the mercy of the Vietnamese, but Lê Loi was a gracious and honorable winner. The Ming generals were invited to a lavish banquet, and afterwards were allowed to lead the 86,640 remaining Ming soldiers back to China. 500 ships were allocated for those who wanted to travel overseas, and 20,000 captured men and horses were released. Among these generals was Wang Tong, who also returned to China and later fought in many more Ming wars before retiring. Regardless of how well Lê Loi treated the retreating Ming soldiers, he was aware that Dai Viet would never be safe from Chinese interventions once he was gone. So after Lê Loi was crowned, he patched the relationship with the Chinese and gained with the Ming Emperor the status of an independent tributary state for Dai Viet. It was a small cost for the reborn state in return for peace at its northern borders. And while Lê Loi ended up doing much more great things for the country, things didn't keep being so great after he died, as he had expected. Internal struggles and politics contaminated the Vietnamese court like an infectious disease. Of all the famous heroes who fought with Lê Loi, none died peacefully in their beds. But even so, thanks to Lê Loi, Dai Viet retains its independence under the leadership of the Le dynasty till this day. You wonder, why does a Chinese know so much of Vietnamese history? Why does he hold that foreigner, Lê Loi, in such high regard? Especially since he fought a long war against his own country and defeated its armies. Well, that's because I am Wang Tong, former general, and Lê Loi's adversary. And in my many years of fighting, I have never fought a more noble and smart commander than him. I do not easily think of others as my equal, but we met several times to try to broker a peace between us, and shared the same hardships during this war, even if it was on different sides. I respect that man as if he was my brother.